She was just the cleaning lady. Until a billion-dollar call changed everything. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was nearly midnight, and the CEO's top floor was a graveyard of glass, chrome, and silence. Only the faint hum of the city below and the occasional mechanical sigh from the HVAC system broke the stillness. Janessa Williams, clad in her gray uniform and sensible sneakers, paused her mopping, her hand tightening around the worn handle. Ring, ring, ring. Nobody was supposed to be here this late, not even the assistants or overnight security. Just her. And yet the sleek, black office phone on the CEO's massive oak desk kept screaming like it was life or death. She hesitated, glancing at the company logo etched in steel above the frosted glass wall. Alton Global Holdings. A multi-billion-dollar empire run by people who didn't know her name. She shouldn't pick up that phone. But something in that ring, the desperation of it, the urgency, pried at her instincts. Janessa set the mop aside, stepped behind the enormous desk she'd cleaned 100 times, and carefully lifted the receiver. Alton Global Holdings, she said, her voice uncertain, evening maintenance staff speaking. The voice on the other end was fast, thickly accented, and panicked. Finally, we've been calling for 40 minutes. I need to speak with Mr. Alton now. This contract change is unacceptable. If this stands, we are pulling out. Do you understand? We are talking $1, $2 billion, and I will not be played with. Janessa's breath caught. Billion? She quickly glanced at the contract papers left haphazardly across the CEO's desk. Someone had clearly been in a rush. Her heart thudded. Sir, she said slowly, calmly, Mr. Alton isn't available right now. It's very late here in New York. There was a pause on the other end. The man's tone turned sharp. Then find someone who matters. If this amendment isn't explained, we are done. This deal dies. Do you hear me? Janessa looked around. Empty chairs. Empty halls. Just her, the mop, the vacuum, and now a billion-dollar meltdown. No one else was coming. And so, with nothing but her calm and years of being unseen, Janessa took a breath and said the most terrifying and powerful words of her life. Sir, I'm not someone who makes decisions here, but I am someone who listens. Would you let me hear your concerns until someone who can act is available? The silence on the line stretched. Then he began to talk. Janessa gripped the receiver tighter as the voice on the other end launched into a tirade, his words jagged, sharp with anger and betrayal. He was from the Singapore delegation, she gathered. His name was Mr. Tan, and he represented a powerful sovereign fund that had been preparing to invest billions into Alton Global's infrastructure expansion. But something had changed. A clause added at the last minute. A guarantee removed. A deadline moved forward without consultation. This wasn't what we agreed to, Mr. Tan snapped. It reeks of bait and switch. Janessa didn't pretend to understand every term he used, but she recognized something else. The frustration of being dismissed, of promises broken without explanation. She'd lived it, survived it, so she didn't panic. She didn't offer false reassurances. She did something far rarer. She listened. I can't speak to why the contract changed, she said carefully, but I can hear what matters to you. And I can promise your message will be delivered clearly, without spin. I'm here. You're not alone in this moment. On the other end, the shouting slowed. Back in the room, the glass walls reflected Janessa's own image. Her uniform, her rubber gloves, the dusting rag still tucked into her belt. She'd worked here for 6 years. Knew every floor, every corner, every spill and coffee stain. She passed executives who never made eye contact. Rode elevators with assistants who clutched their laptops tighter when she stepped in. She was, to them, invisible. But now, she was the only one who picked up the phone. And for the first time, someone on the other end was talking to her like she mattered. Mr. Tan's tone cooled, but the stakes didn't. We were promised transparency. Suddenly the indemnity clause is stripped? Who does that 12 hours before signing? Janessa, standing amid the polished silence of power, nodded as if he could see her. That does sound like something that needs answers, she said. Needs answers? It needs integrity. He barked. We have legal counsel combing through this, and frankly, it feels like someone at your firm thinks we're naive. We aren't. I don't believe you are, sir, Janessa replied, steady as ever. And you deserve more than a brush-off from a voicemail. I'm not a lawyer or a manager, but if someone made changes behind closed doors, that should be brought into the light. Please, let me help ensure that happens. Another pause, this time longer. She could hear the rustle of paper, the hiss of air through vents on his side of the world. Then, softly, "Who are you?" There it was. Janessa swallowed. "My name's Janessa Williams. I clean the offices at night. That's all." Silence. Then, unbelievable, laughter. Not cruel, disbelieving. A cleaner? They left a billion-dollar deal dangling, and a cleaner is the only one who answers? "I know it sounds ridiculous," she said, smiling faintly. "But here we are." Mr. Tan didn't hang up, didn't curse. Instead, his voice dropped to something near a whisper. "I've dealt with men in $1,000 suits who don't listen half as well as you just did." That line stayed with her, long after the call ended, because it meant he hadn't hung up, and he'd agreed to wait until morning. By the time Janessa hung up, the silence in the office felt heavier. The line had gone dead with a sigh from Mr. Tan and the words, "We will give your company until 9 a.m. to explain. After that, we walk." She stood there for a long minute, the phone still warm in her hand, the echo of the call buzzing in her ears. Then she looked down at her gloves, cracked from bleach, faded from long nights. Her fingers trembled, just slightly. She'd spoken to a man whose name had probably been in Forbes. A man who could swing markets. And he had listened to her. No degrees. No titles. Just presence. Janessa gathered herself, stepped back from the desk, and resumed her work like nothing had happened. The world didn't stop because a cleaner had momentarily stepped into the current of power. And yet, beneath that calm exterior, memories stirred. She had grown up in the Bronx, raised by a mother who cleaned houses and a father who taught her to see dignity in every job, no matter how invisible it made you. She'd lost them both by 30, first her mom to a slow cancer, then her father to a sudden winter stroke. No inheritance, no favors, just debts and the crushing grind of survival. Every night since, Janessa had walked the 40-minute trip to Midtown, pushing past crowds of people who never looked twice. She cleaned executive suites where bonuses were bigger than her entire yearly pay. She scrubbed wine stains and wiped secrets off windows. She had never once been thanked by the people who ran the place. Until tonight. Not by the company, but by a stranger on the other side of the world who saw her when no one else did. The rest of Janessa's shift passed in silence, but her mind wouldn't still. As she wiped down glass walls and emptied bins, she replayed the conversation over and over. "Who are you?" "I'm just the cleaning lady. And you listen better than anyone else." By 2:40 a.m., the sky outside the CEO's panoramic windows had turned the deep indigo of pre-dawn. She paused at the desk once more. The contract Mr. Tan had mentioned still sat there, red-marked, revised, and clearly unfinished. Some executive must have left in a hurry, assuming someone else would manage the fallout. She shook her head. So much power, so little care. On a yellow notepad nearby, Janessa scribbled a message. "Mr. Alton or team. Received urgent international call contract clause. Mr. Tan, Singapore delegation, highly distressed. Threatened withdrawal. I relayed no authority, only concern. He's expecting answers by 9 a.m. Janessa, night maintenance." She placed the note beside the contract, weighted it with a marble paperweight, and left it centered like a warning bell. Then, quietly, she left the office. Outside, the night wind greeted her like an old friend. She zipped her jacket tighter and walked home through the empty city streets, fluorescent lights flickering, pigeons nesting in forgotten corners. She didn't feel powerful, but she didn't feel invisible anymore, either. When Janessa arrived home just before 4 a.m., her small apartment in the Bronx was still and dark. She kicked off her shoes, hung her jacket, and collapsed onto the couch without even changing. Her body ached, but her thoughts spun like a carousel that wouldn't stop. A billion-dollar call, a cleaner's voice, a note left behind. She told herself not to expect anything. The higher-ups would either ignore her scribbled message or, more likely, trash it before reading. But a quiet, defiant part of her whispered, "They can't ignore the call." She drifted into sleep sometime before dawn. By the time her phone buzzed at 8:12 a.m., she jolted upright, heart pounding. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Is this Janessa Williams?" a sharp female voice asked. "Speaking. This is Kara Lynn, executive assistant to Mr. Alton. We found your note. We need to speak with you immediately." Janessa sat up straighter. "About Mr. Tan?" A pause. "Yes. And about what you said to him." The tone wasn't angry, just urgent, controlled. But Janessa recognized what was underneath: fear. Something had gone wrong at the top, and the only one who'd taken responsibility last night was the one without a desk. By 8:50 a.m., Janessa was back in the building, this time in clean clothes and wide awake, her hair pulled into a neat bun. Security waved her through without question. Kara Lynn met her at the elevator, heels clicking, expression taut. "Mr. Alton is not pleased," Kara said as they ascended. "Neither is legal. That clause wasn't supposed to be in the version sent to Singapore." "So it was a mistake?" Janessa asked, already knowing the answer. Kara's jaw clenched. It was a power move. Someone junior thought they'd get a better margin. They didn't clear it with legal. Mr. Alton found out 5 minutes ago when Mr. Tan called again, asking for the woman who spoke with him. Janessa blinked. He remembered me? He remembered that someone gave him time and respect. And now we're trying to stop him from pulling the plug. Kara turned to her. "Whatever you said last night, it bought us a second chance. And right now, you're the reason we haven't lost the deal." The elevator opened. The executive floor buzzed like a shaken beehive. Phones ringing, people pacing, legal documents flying between desks. Janessa, the cleaning lady, stepped into it all. For the first time, people looked at her, not through her, not past her, at her, and not a single one knew what to say. They led her not to the break room, not to some hallway corner, but into the executive boardroom itself, where Janessa had mopped footprints countless times, always with her eyes down. Now she stood beneath the chandelier of power, facing a semicircle of suits. At the head of the table sat Charles Alton himself, graying at the temples, his tailored blazer crisp, eyes sharp as razors. "This is her?" he asked Kara without looking at Janessa. "Yes, sir," Kara replied. Alton turned to face her. "Miss Williams, you answered a call on my desk last night. Why?" There was no thank you, no warmth. Janessa met his gaze. "Because it wouldn't stop ringing, sir. I assumed it was urgent." "It was." "You assumed," he repeated, like the word was made of acid. "And what exactly did you say to Mr. Tan?" She took a slow breath. "I told him I wasn't in a position to speak for the company, but I could listen, that I'd make sure someone followed up. I asked him not to walk away before he had all the facts." Silence. Then Alton leaned back, folding his hands. "Mr. Tan says he's willing to reconsider. Because of you." He looked as though he'd swallowed a lemon. "And now, legal is cleaning up a mess we didn't know existed until your note." A woman from legal added quickly, "We're issuing a corrected contract now. No damage, so far." Alton stared at Janessa again, harder this time. But something in his posture shifted. The frost didn't melt, but it cracked. "You're not on the strategy team. You're not trained. But you showed more judgment than 3 of my managers combined." He tapped the table once, firmly. "Why?" Janessa spoke softly. "Because people don't just want contracts. They want to be heard." The room stayed still for a beat. Then, quietly, Kara Lynn broke the silence. Mr. Tan specifically asked if Janessa could be present on the follow-up call this afternoon. That made several heads turn. Charles Alton's brow furrowed. "He asked for her?" "Yes, sir. Said she showed more humanity than anyone he'd dealt with in the past week." Another silence followed. No one seemed to know how to proceed when the hierarchy got bent out of shape. Alton finally nodded, a reluctant but decisive gesture. "Fine. She'll sit in, but strictly as a witness. No interjections." Janessa inclined her head. "Understood." "Good," Alton said, already distracted, flipping open a leather portfolio. "Kara, prep her. Get her something appropriate to wear." "Yes, sir." Janessa blinked. Excuse me. Something appropriate? Kara gave a tiny smile. Corporate speak for no rubber gloves. Come on. They left the boardroom together. Outside, the office floor was still buzzing, but as Janessa walked past rows of stunned interns and mid-level analysts, she caught it. A few nods. A whispered, "That's her." For the first time in years, people noticed her for more than what she wore. They noticed her because she had listened and acted when no one else would. At 2:03 p.m., Janessa sat at the end of a long, polished table in the glass-walled conference room, wearing a borrowed blazer, her hair neatly tied back. Kara had handed her a tablet and a quick rundown of the key names, but Janessa didn't need it. She remembered Mr. Tan's voice by rhythm, not resume. Across from her, Charles Alton looked composed, his team flanking him in controlled formation. A large monitor blinked to life as the video call connected. Mr. Tan's face filled the screen, imposing, unreadable, flanked by two advisors. His eyes scanned the room and landed on her. "There she is," he said with a nod. "Ms. Williams." Janessa gave a polite smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Tan." Alton cleared his throat. "Mr. Tan, thank you for your time. I'd like to formally apologize for the contract confusion. That version was not intended for distribution, and internal corrections have been made." Mr. Tan's tone was flat. "You're fortunate Ms. Williams took that call. We were minutes from pulling out." Alton nodded slowly. "We're aware. She didn't promise anything," Tan added. "Didn't bluff. Just listened. More than I can say for your legal team." Several people shifted in their chairs. Janessa didn't speak. She simply met Mr. Tan's gaze, steady, human. He smiled. "We'll proceed. Contingent on today's revised agreement and a continued commitment to communication like hers." "Understood," Alton said quickly. "We'll honor that." The call ended with mutual thanks. The moment the screen went dark, the entire room exhaled like a collapsed lung. Alton looked at Janessa, this time fully. "You saved the deal." The room didn't burst into applause. It didn't need to. Janessa sat in the stillness of it, of what she'd just helped preserve. Over $1 billion in corporate partnerships saved, all because she'd picked up a phone nobody else had bothered with. Charles Alton leaned back in his chair, studying her now with something more complicated than surprise. It wasn't gratitude yet, but it wasn't dismissal either. "You don't belong on a night shift," he said slowly, as if the idea had only just become real to him. "You ever thought about doing more?" Janessa raised an eyebrow. Doing more, or being seen more? A few stifled chuckles floated from the younger staff. Alton didn't smile, but he didn't bristle either. His nod was tight. "Point taken." Kara stepped in. "With respect, sir, if we're serious about valuing initiative and judgment, we should recognize it." Alton turned to his team. "Get HR. I want her file. Let's find out where she fits better." Janessa said nothing. She didn't need to. The weight of her actions had already spoken louder than any title ever could. As the room emptied, Kara approached with a look that blended pride and awe. "Welcome to the table," she whispered. Janessa smiled. Not wide, just enough. Because it wasn't just a table. It was a shift. 2 days later, Janessa found herself in a completely different part of the building, a part she used to vacuum around with quiet detachment. Now she walked there with a visitor badge clipped to her jacket and a folder in her hand. HR had fast-tracked her interview process, not because she demanded it, but because no one wanted to lose her. They called it a community liaison assistant role, nestled between corporate communications and client experience. A hybrid position, newly created. "We're redesigning the pipeline," they told her. "You're the prototype." Translation: "We never saw you coming, but now we can't unsee you." During orientation, she walked past her old janitor's closet. It still smelled like pine sol and humility. Her heart tugged, not with regret, but reverence. She'd worked hard there, swept up others' carelessness, lived through loss and fatigue, found a rhythm in solitude. There was no shame in where she started, and no limit to where she could go. That night, she called her younger brother. "They offered me a real desk," she said softly. "You gonna take it?" Janessa paused. "I think I already did. The moment I picked up that phone." Months passed. The deal with Singapore not only held, it blossomed. Alton Global stock surged. New partners cited responsiveness and integrity as deciding factors. Internally, the firm launched a quiet campaign on rediscovering value, an HR initiative inspired, though never openly credited, by a moment in the night when someone without a title held the company together. And Janessa? She adjusted to office life slowly. Still rode the same train. Still packed her lunch. But her days were no longer spent behind closed doors. She sat in meetings, offered insights, helped rewrite communication protocols for global clients. People knocked on her door now. One evening, as the office emptied out, Janessa walked past the CEO's floor, the same one she used to clean. The same desk. The same phone. She paused, listening. Silence. No ringing tonight. But she smiled anyway. Because that one call, answered not out of duty, but courage, had changed everything. Not because she fixed the contract, but because she saw the crisis, stepped into it, and proved that true power doesn't ask permission to matter. It simply listens and acts. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.